Hello and welcome to NCAA Week 8. I'm John.
And I'm Josh.
And we're going to start off this week, first of all, by mentioning last week, Week 7, was upset weekend.
It was awesome.
There were some incredible games and some huge upsets that occurred, and a lot of question marks. A lot of those games where some of these wins you went, oh, is this team for real?
Where did that team come from?
Where did they come from? And some of them were a huge surprise. We're going to get into that as we talk about next week's games. But the one we're going to mention now, because we're not going to mention either of these teams later, would be the Texas Longhorns. And if you remember last week, the real question was not whether Texas was going to win the game. The question was, is Matt Brown going to keep his job?
And what do you know? Texas comes in there, and I guess he might keep his job for a couple more weeks because they dominated that game on both offense and defense.
And so the Sooners were gone. They were really they weren't able to do anything against Texas, and so
McCoy.
That was a huge one. Nobody was expecting that one. And so what we're going to do? Okay, this coming week, the first BCS standings will come out of the final BCS season. And so before we do that, before we talk about the BCS and when we get into all that next time, what we're going to do this week is talk about all the undefeated teams up through Week 7. And so we'll go through talking about the teams and then what they've done and where they're going if it's important. And so we'll start off, of course, the number one, Alabama. They're still in on this thing. And so the question will be, will they be, okay, they're going to be playing Arkansas, right?
They will be.
And Arkansas was destroyed by South Carolina last week.
Actually, before that, we were like, okay, maybe Arkansas isn't as bad as they were last year. But I guess in the end, they can't compete with the bigger teams.
Yeah, and so Alabama had no problem with Kentucky last week. So Arkansas this coming week. The next one is Oregon, which we expect they'll probably be number 2, depending on what happens this week, of course. And last week, they were actually challenged by the Washington Huskies.
I can't really say anything to it.
No. They really... Washington is sort of the first defense that they really faced, as far as Oregon. The first defense they really faced. Sorry, Tennessee. You don't count. But the first defense they faced, and so Washington sort of hung with them a little bit, but then 21 points in the fourth quarter, and Washington was just blowing out after that, 45-24.
So now they're playing the other Washington team this week,
Washington State.
Yes, that should once again be another 60-plus game for Oregon.
Okay, then let's move on to the ACC. We have Clemson, who's still undefeated, and they opened their season beating Georgia.
They did. That was a great game.
A pretty big surprise. Good game. But they really haven't had a really challenging game since then.
Well, not since, but this week, the next team we're going to talk about is Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State also undefeated, and these two teams, this has probably got to be the game of the week.
Maybe yes.
These two teams going against each other, both undefeated. Huge for the ACC. Huge for both of these teams.
Florida State just came, and they're going against number 25 Maryland, and they just crushed them. It was the biggest, probably.
What was it?
62-0. It was almost. It was like 62.
It was an absolute blowout. Everybody thought that Maryland would show up, and they did not. And did we say anything about Maryland last week? I hope not. But whatever. It was sort of sad. I actually wanted to see Maryland put up a little more fight, but they didn't. Okay, Ohio State, the Buckeyes. Now this one takes a little. They're undefeated.
Yeah.
To this point, they've really only played 2 semi-serious teams,
and they both kept it really close.
In Wisconsin and Northwestern, who played each other last week, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and in both of these teams, neither of these teams have done great, Wisconsin nor Northwestern, and the truth of the matter is, Ohio State, with their soft schedule, and they do have a soft schedule, it's ranked like 65th out of 120 teams in the nation. So it's a pretty soft schedule. They don't have a serious contender until the end of the season in Michigan.
Which, I mean, Michigan just lost to Penn State in, what, 4th overtime?
Michigan, that was a huge upset.
Hey, so who knows? Maybe Penn State still has something left in them.
And they do have to play, and Ohio State does have to play Penn State. Penn State, with their freshman quarterback, took Michigan to 4 overtimes, including a blocked field goal in the overtimes, and then getting that thing in the end zone. It was an awesome game.
It was really great. It was good.
It was a great game to watch, and Penn State, they had what it took to finish that thing out. I don't know though against Ohio State or Michigan, either one. I think Ohio State cruises from this point.
I think they might have a couple of trouble because they're just not as good as I thought they were going to be.
Well, we'll see. They've got a great quarterback.
They do.
Not no doubt about that.
Great defense though. So
okay. The next one, Louisville. Now, Louisville with Teddy Bridgewater, they really face probably their toughest game this season, this Friday night in UCF Knights. And so, can Central Florida do it?
No, I don't think so. Central Florida kept it really close against
Bobby's
South Carolina.
alma mater?
They kept it really close against South Carolina, UCF did. But, honestly, I think Louisville is the better team out of those two. Just because they have such an explosive offense. It's crazy. Teddy Bridgewater can throw any throw if you give him time. Anything.
And you think he'll have time?
And I think he'll have time.
Okay, we'll see. But if Louisville wins this game, you look at their schedule, I don't see anything on there that they have to worry about.
Yeah, this is basically going to win the, what is it, AAC for Louisville?
AAC?
That what it's now called?
Yeah.
The American, yeah.
Okay, next team. Let's move over to the other coast, to the Pac-12. And you have UCLA, who's undefeated.
They're the only, Miami's undefeated too, so there's a couple ACC teams that are undefeated. It's actually looking kind of strong. Pac-12.
Pac-12. We've already left ACC behind. Bye-bye. And we'll get to Miami in just a second. But UCLA, they face one loss. Okay, this is the problem with UCLA. They're undefeated at this point, but they face one loss, Stanford, who got surprised last week as well. That was another one of those upsets.
Where did that come from?
Who knows? So they face Stanford, and then they also face 0-loss Oregon, who is storming at this point. I can't imagine that they're going to make it through the next 2 weeks unscathed.
Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, what I'm hoping is that Stanford beats them, and then they beat Oregon. Or at least some team beats Oregon.
They win one of those two?
That's my hope, that one team somewhere along the way might surprise Oregon. I just don't see it happening, though.
I don't really, at this point, I don't really see it happening either. Okay, then we're going to move back over to the other coast again with Miami, another ACC team. And Miami's undefeated up to this point.
They beat Florida earlier on, which I guess that is impressive, but you have to also consider now Florida's just
Well, Miami's definitely got an offense. They were able to score on Florida. Florida's got a great defense. They really do. They just don't have an offense.
Hard to score on, nope.
and which Florida showed last week when they played LSU. They were able to stop LSU and hold LSU to not very many points, but they couldn't score.
Yeah, that was a good LSU.
Their life depended on it.
Anyways, Miami looks like they're going to be undefeated by the time they play Florida State on November 2nd.
Yeah, and that could be huge depending on what Florida State does with Clemson this week.
Which, speaking of that game, I do think Clemson's going to end up winning.
Oh, you're going to jump back on that game. Okay. We'll see. I really think Florida State will pull that one out.
Okay.
But Florida State, they disappoint every single season.
And not only against
every time you expect them and think that they should win a game, they always lose it. So Baylor Bears.
RG3 is back. No, he's not.
Well, but Baylor Bears are back. And they're also a pretty much a surprise. They've stayed undefeated so far, but the test is to come. I mean, they have some tough Big 12 teams in front of them. And all of them ranked, or
really,
the
if you're
majority
in
of them
the Big 12, then it seems like you're going to have a lot of games tough ahead of you. There's good teams.
That's true. I mean, they're going to have to face Oklahoma State. They're going to have to face Texas Tech. They got some tough teams ahead. They're going to have a really hard November ahead of them.
This one, last week I said Georgia was going to win by 28 plus points.
Oh, my goodness. So, Georgia, Missouri, yeah.
My bad.
Got that one wrong, didn't we? Didn't you? Missouri went in there. Okay, Missouri 6-0. What is up with that? Talk about a shock to the SEC, and particularly the SEC East. Missouri coming in there undefeated, but will that end now?
Well, after their quarterback got hurt, you have to wonder.
Yes, you
with
do.
Franklin out, you have to think, can they actually go against probably one of the best defenses in the SEC, Florida.
Potentially among the best defenses in the country.
It really is.
And so you've got, can they do it? Can Missouri move the ball on Florida? We'll see. Last week I would have said no, they couldn't do anything against Georgia, and they did. So, what can I say?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say too much.
Yeah, let's just leave it.
Don't want to eat any more of that humble pie.
I wouldn't mind them winning either.
Okay, back to the Big 12. Texas Tech undefeated. And some of these teams have already fallen. Some of these, the Oklahoma but Texas Tech, they're undefeated right now, but they got to face West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Baylor. They've got a lot of teams they've got to play, and Texas, who really loves Texas Tech.
Oh, they do.
So they've got to face all these teams. Can they make it through all those undefeated?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But honestly, if they just lose like one game, then they're still doing pretty well off.
Okay, now let's head to the Mountain West, and we've got Fresno State still undefeated.
They are. They did have some trouble a couple weeks ago, which was iffy. I think they were going against New Mexico State, and you can't have trouble with a team like that if you want to break the BCS.
Derek Carr, their quarterback, has so much potential. I mean, this guy, when we watched him play against Boise, he can move that ball. The guy's got some talent, and it really, they might play Boise again for the Mountain West Championship.
Awesome. Let's hope they do.
Wyoming has a bid in there. Wyoming is sort of, I think they're above Boise right now.
They're above Boise currently.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Fresno's got to play Wyoming, and Boise's got to play Wyoming, so who knows what's going to happen by the end of that. The last team out of these teams that are undefeated is Northern Illinois.
Again.
Yeah, they've got a great quarterback in Lynch, and they have, if you look at their schedule, there doesn't seem to be anything there to stop them from having a perfect season.
Another perfect season for Northern Illinois. It looks like it's coming. So you just got to watch out and hope they can do better if they make a BCS bowl than they did last year.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, now, to finish this off, there are a couple teams that are in the top 10 that have one loss. Mm-hmm. And so let's mention those before we finish up here.
They're both SEC because of the SEC bias, so obviously, even with the loss, SEC can still be in there. Okay. One of them is LSU, who just scraped by Florida and is now facing an Ole Miss team, which seems to be so up and down. It's crazy.
Up and down? They've lost their last 3 games.
They've lost their last 3 games, but besides the Alabama game, they've all been pretty close.
Yeah, and they actually did give Texas A&M a challenge.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. But they weren't able to pull it out.
Texas
so they've had 3 losses in a row. LSU's probably going to add another one to that. Oral Sunshine.
Yeah. Poor
no
Sunshine,
more.
yeah.
No more Sunshine.
Okay,
Texas A&M. They're also in the top 10.
They are.
They've got that one loss to Alabama, and so now they survived Ole Miss. They barely, they didn't do that great with that one, and now they face a surprising Auburn, who's only had 1 loss to LSU. Yeah. And, this Auburn team is a huge surprise for this season. Nobody was expecting them to do anything this season after a horrible season with Chizik last year. Get rid of that coach, and hey things go up.
Auburn's ranked, so
they're ranked.
I mean, I'm gonna have to say this. I'm probably gonna regret it, but I think that Auburn might be able to win this game. I think that they might be able to come in. Okay. Texas A&M, they just don't look like the team they were last year to me. They have Johnny Manziel, and that seems like it's it. They lost so many players to the NFL. So far, they've just not been that impressive.
Yeah, well, Johnny Manziel's tough to stop. Can Auburn do it? We'll see.
Ole Miss could.
Yeah. All right, well, that's it for this week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.